future-looking statements are inherently subject to risk and uncertainty, our reminder is that you should make any purchasing or investment decisions based on products that are currently commercially available. Please welcome Senior Director, Developer Relations, Salesforce, and Senior Developer Advocate, Marketing Cloud, Salesforce, Renee Winkelmeyer and Danielle Laregi.
Hello, developers, and welcome to Release Readiness Live. And we're live here from Dreamforce in San Francisco.
Thank you all for joining us today in the room, as well to all of our viewers online and all of our product managers that will be speaking today.
Danielle and I, we will be your hosts for today's show. But talking about shows, Danielle, what was most exciting for you at Dreamforce?
Well, I've got to see some amazing sessions and product demos. And also, I'm really excited about being alive. I am excited about being alive, but I'm more excited about being here live in San Francisco today.
I can relate to that because, 3 days on our feet, talking to all of you amazing people, coming together with this amazing family reunion. Developers, be loud, come on, right? It's Dreamforce. Now, this is Release Readiness Live. Let's talk about what we will cover today.
We have some amazing product innovations for you today. Anyone out there excited about APIs? All right, what about Marketing Cloud Account Engagement powered by Pardot? Any Flownatics out there? Well, you're in luck because we're covering all those amazing things today.
And you can ask us questions, right? You can tag us at Salesforce Devs on Twitter. You can ask online in the Trailblazer community because you're not only in the room, you're also online around the globe. Now, don't forget, we have the hashtag, right? Which is at hashtag Salesforce Live. Please use that our awesome online team can track you. Now, I think we have one more thing.
Yep, we have a question for you all. Are you ready?
She said, are you ready? Okay, so let's talk about the first topic of today, which is a great innovation of GraphQL on the Salesforce platform. Please give a really loud welcome for Sufta Miakma, Director of Product Management here at Salesforce.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Sufta Miakma, Product Manager for Lightning Data Service. At Salesforce, we understand that you're always thinking of innovative ways to integrate Salesforce to third-party systems. That's why we take an API-first approach to building features on our platform. Whenever you create an object or add a custom field, we automatically generate an API for that information. And we provide a variety of APIs. Today, I'm very excited to share with you that in the Winter 23 release, we have added a brand new API called GraphQL API to our collection. Who's heard of GraphQL before today? Some? Yeah, thank you. Before I show you how it works, let me explain what GraphQL is. GraphQL is a standard query language for APIs that gives the client the power to ask for exactly what's needed and nothing more. You get a single endpoint for all the available resources, and data can be aggregated across multiple resources. This prevents overfetching and underfetching of data and improves app performance. Okay, so what's the magic of GraphQL? To understand this, let's take an example profile page of an app that shows customer engagement. If I'm using a REST API, it would need to call a different endpoint for each resource. As a result, it would take multiple rounds to the server to render this profile page with data and metadata. and it will make it slow, especially on mobile. What about GraphQL? Well, with GraphQL, you only need to call one endpoint and make one round trip to the server. Not only that, because you can ask only for the data that you need, the overall data size would be smaller. That's why GraphQL is fast and flexible. One more thing. Because it is an industry standard and well adapted, you don't need to learn a proprietary Salesforce query language. I really like that. All right, so let me jump into the demo to show you how to explore our GraphQL API and work with it. I'm going to ask some friends to help me. We have here Mohit and Stefan to drive the demo. Let's bring it on. So what you see here is the user interface of Graphql, a popular IDE for GraphQL. We have connected it to Salesforce org to explore the APIs. I'm going to start with a simple example to fetch accounts. If you look at the query, it is schema-driven. We specify the API type, operation type, followed by entity and fields we need data from. GraphQL allows us to map our data to a network of nodes, edges, and connections. A network of nodes, edges, and connections. I think I get it why there is the word graph in its name. All right, let's execute. And voila, we got the result. So when running the query, we respect field-level security and CRUD permissions of the user, just like with REST API. If you look closely, the response schema resembles the request schema. And as a developer, you can describe in your query how you want your results to look like. That's why GraphQL is developer-friendly. OK, how about now we sort the results by account name? For this, we can add an argument for sorting. Also, let's filter the query to show only the accounts with annual revenue greater than $100,000. For this, we're using where argument. And let's hit execute. Voila. So we have the filtered and sorted result. Notice that you can explore documents right here. Thanks to introspection capability, I can traverse the entire schema, starting from the root type down to connections and nodes. It's pretty cool to be able to do this right within the browser. OK, Mohit, are you ready for another example? All right. So this time, a query that is a little more involved. We want to fetch accounts and their related contacts, opportunities, and cases. That's right, all in one. And let's hit execute. So this is an example of data aggregation across multiple resources. I could have also asked for the metadata as well in a single query. And we have the result that includes accounts, contacts, opportunities, and cases. You can do more with GraphQL, like writing queries with semi-join or anti-join filters. Let me show you an example with semi-join. Here is a query that fetches only the accounts whose opportunities are in prospecting stage and have 20% probability of closing. Notice the INC operator, spelled as INQ. It does all the magic. Click execute. And we have the result of the join operation. So in upcoming releases, we're planning to add new features, like the ability to create, update records, and interface with a wider family of APIs. What you've seen is the server-side GraphQL functionality that is available today to any application that integrates with Salesforce. Listen up, for developers who build Lightning Web Components, we have even more great news. We're building a GraphQL wire adapter that will unlock native querying capability from LWC. It will be so much easier to fetch Salesforce data using GraphQL queries. And this new data adapter will pilot in Spring 23 release. On the screen here, you see an example LWC code that is using this new upcoming GraphQL wire adapter. Well, folks, it's been a great pleasure to share with you all about GraphQL and what's happening at Salesforce related to GraphQL. Thank you. My colleagues and I are showing demos at Lightning Web Components booth downstairs in a Trailblazer Forest. Please stop by. And thank you for your attention. Back to you, René and Danielle.
Thank you, Sufta. What an amazing presentation. GraphQL on the Salesforce platform. Just envision you online and in the room, how this will really enrich our developer experience. And in the future, invoking GraphQL from Lightning Web Components? Mind-blowing. Now, this is not really our only topic today, isn't it?
No, it's not. Actually, I might be a little bit biased, but as a Marketing Cloud developer advocate, I'm really excited about our next topic. Our next topic is Marketing Cloud Account Engagement, External Actions. And to present that is our next speaker, Christopher Cornett, Senior Product Manager here at Salesforce.
Give it away.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christopher Cornett, and I'm Product Manager for Account Engagement, responsible for our developer experience. And today I'm here to talk to you about external actions. And since external actions are built on invocable actions, I'm going to be saying the word actions a lot. And I just want to say, I may dare say, technically, this may be the most action-packed segment you see. So let's start with what is Marketing Cloud Account Engagement. Some of you may not be familiar because we haven't always been big in the developer area, but we're looking to change that. And what Marketing Cloud Account Engagement is it was designed to allow marketing or B2B marketers to be able to personalize outreach at scale. It allows them to be able to automate their marketing journeys, be able to also nurture interest in products, and see the return on investment of their marketing campaigns. But we realize that a marketing ecosystem is really a sum of all its parts, and that's where we need developer capabilities so that marketing teams can build their dream marketing ecosystem. And so that's why we've been focused heavily on our APIs, building with core functionalities like custom builder components, external activity, and today I'm very excited and honored to talk about external actions with you. So what is external actions? It's the ability to make a call out within our Engagement Studio program, which is our automation system, so that you can extend the automations and execute an external action. So this opens up a limitless types of possibilities, from sending SMS text, registering for a webinar, or even being able to kick off another workflow or automation workflow in another system. And what's great is this is using tools that you're already familiar with, invocable actions, which can be built with Apex, Flow, or external services. And so you have your options of how to be able to implement this. So what does it take to build an external action? So the first thing is you need an invocable action. I mentioned that probably a few times already. You can build it. You can install it from the App Exchange. You may already have some lying around that you've already built that you can extend into the marketing space. Next thing is you need to configure an external action record. And what this does is it takes that invocable action and strings it together with Engagement Studio so that it can be used within the marketing automation. And then finally, hand it over to your marketing team. Let them play with it and start using it so that you can help supercharge their marketing game. So with that, let's jump into the demo. So here is what Engagement Studio looks like. It's basically a workflow system specialized for B2B marketers. And so this is the webinar flow that they're planning to run. The first step, like most webinars, you're going to invite people to it. And that's going to point them to a landing page where there is a form for you to fill out. And then we have this trigger step here, which if they complete this form, then we're sending them to the next step, add webinar registration. That's not a default action within Engagement Studio. That's the external action. And if we click on this step node, we see that there's really only one input that's required, the webinar ID. And so that's very simple for marketers. They click save, they hit start, and now they have their new marketing campaign running. But let's take a look at what this looks like in Salesforce. So this is the external action record. It's very simple. You basically select the invocable action that you want to use, in this case, Zoom API request, and then it's going to auto-populate an action schema for you. This is where you configure it to work with Engagement Studio. There's 3 key sections here. First is properties, which are the inputs. In this case, we have email, first name, last name, and webinar ID. And what you see here is we're actually using account engagement HTML tags to auto-populate the prospect information so that the marketers do not have to. And then we also have the webinar ID here, which we just put a simple default prompt. And now we also want to view it to the user for input. That's where the view section comes in. And essentially anything you define here will become user input. In this case, it's just webinar ID. And then the final section is required. Required section is typically something you're not going to actually have to change much because it's required to make the invocable action. But you can have the option to be able to add or remove them. So that's what the external action record looks like. Now let's jump into the invocable action. First thing you're going to notice, this is Apex, right? It's an invocable action. It really just requires 2 annotations. The first one you see on the input request class, which is invocable variable. This defines it as input into the invocable action. Next, you have the method add webinar registrant. This uses the annotation invocable method. This makes it callable as an invocable action. And then the rest of this probably looks pretty familiar and straightforward to y'all. Basically, we are building a request to the Zoom API. We're configuring the endpoint for that request, and then we're submitting for the registration. So now you've seen the code, you've seen the configuration, and you've seen what it looks like for a marketer. But let's actually test this out. And what's a nice thing that is great with us tying into invocable actions is they're reusable. And so in this example, we're actually using Flow to do this real-time test with you. And it's very basic. So essentially, we have one step, which is the inputs. Then we have the call to the invocable action for registration, and then results. This is very basic. You're going to see some awesome stuff a little bit later when we get to the flow section of this presentation, or not my presentation, but Sam. She's going to show you a lot of cool things, but this is straightforward for testing. So when we click run, it's going to bring up a screen, and you know one person I always enjoy seeing at sessions is Cody Bear. Cody Bear is a lot of fun. So why don't we jumpstart this webinar by registering them for it. And so we enter the information, we click submit, and then we get the success notification. But that's within this screen, right? So why don't we actually go over and test it, see what it looks like in Zoom. Just confirm everything worked. And look at that. We have Cody Bear, Appy, Astro. This is going to be a fun webinar, isn't it? And so that is how you build end-to-end an external action. But that's not all. We have also enabled and extended the metadata to include marketing app extensions, so this can be packaged, making it easy to promote from sandbox to production, or for you to list it on the App Exchange, which we're really excited about. And so my one ask of you is if you do know how to code invocable actions, please take a look at this feature. You may already be sitting on something that can make you a hero with your marketing team. So thank you so much for letting me talk to you today, and I'm going to turn it back over to Renee and Danielle.
Wow, that was amazing. Marketing Cloud, account engagement, external actions, you can use them with Apex, Flow. But that's not all. I don't think we should stop the flow here. Get it?
I think I got it. Any Flownetics in the room? Louder. Okay. I would say let's start with our last topic. And let's keep going with the flow. And please let's welcome Sam Reinhardt, Director of Product Management here at Salesforce.
Thank you all for the warm welcome. As Renee mentioned, President Flownatic on this panel today and Product Manager for ScreenFlows. So I'm excited to talk to you about what the Flow Builder team has been up to with Winter 23. This is a really, really busy slide. We've been hard at work delivering a ton of new features for you, covering screen flows, record-triggered flows, as well as some enhancements for all Flow Builder users. But I obviously have about 10 minutes to talk to you, not 3 hours. So we're not going to go into depth on all of these today. Instead, we're going to kick off a demo in a minute or so, and we're going to highlight a handful of these, but I'll talk to you later about ways you can learn about more of them. So today, I'm mainly going to be focusing on the combined power of Lightning Web Components and Flow. On the Flow Builder team, we love LWC. We built our builder on it in 2019, and most of it is still built on LWC today. We're slowly working out all the Aura gaps still. We also, with Winter 23, are transitioning everyone's runtime UI to a fully LWC-based runtime. But it's not just about what we build, it's about what you all build. And we're so excited by how much the community has put together with screen components, adding the awesome sophistication of Lightning Web Components into your screens. However, it's been a long time since we released the Aura Lightning Flow component, and then LWC came out. So I've often been asked, when are we going to have it the other way around? When are we going to be able to embed a screen flow into an LWC? And I'm thrilled to be able to tell you that it is now available with Winter 23. Woo! Yes. You all may have seen this in the developer keynote, but we are definitely going to get into a demo today. As of now, you can use the new Lightning Flow LWC, Lightning Dash Flow, as you'll see in a minute, to embed those screen flows into your Lightning Web Components. But Mohit, let's kick it off with the demo. All right. So here we are in Pulsar Motors. At Pulsar Motors, quality is the name of the game. No vehicle makes it onto our showroom unless we are completing all of these inspections. Now, we created this vehicle inspection checker. It's a custom LWC to walk those specialists through this process. And we know that you don't necessarily go through the vehicle in the same order every time. Something may catch your eye. So we specifically built this checker to be nonlinear, so you can fill it out organically as you have things to report. Mohit, let's go ahead and start that engine inspection. So here we have a screen flow launched from a Lightning Web component in a modal. Before we move forward on this flow, I actually want to talk about a couple of things that are not the Lightning Flow component. These are new enhancements to all Flow Builder users who are building screen flows in Winter 23. The first is that lookup. Mohit didn't stop. Existing lookup component now supports multiple selections. You can just set what is the maximum number of items you want your users to select now. And that's a data table on the screen, but this is not something we installed or built ourselves. This is available out of the box in Flow Builder as a beta component with Winter 23. We're so excited. And one of the things that we're excited about is that formulas are just resolved. So these images, they're just beautiful and spiff up your screens really nicely. All right, so let's talk about what the flow is actually doing here. We've got, with that lookup, we've selected what parts did we inspect of the engine. And then with this data table, what parts did we replace? So as Mohit identifies, we replace the carburetor and the motor mounts. We're going to move on. And now we're going to select, OK, so for those replacements, what tools did we use to make the replacement? That's another data table, no images this time. Let's move on to the final screen. We're going to enter some last details. There's also an Easter egg. This is not new, this release, but I wanted to remind you all, you can control the navigation labels in your screen flows and give beautiful context to the users who are walking through. This means that I know exactly what's going to happen when I click this button. So let's complete the engine inspection. A bunch of things happen. The modal closes. There's a toast message that fires to let users know what happened. The engine item is marked off on the checklist, and the inspect button is hidden, so we don't get any duplicate reports. And I feel really productive because that completion percentage incremented. Awesome. All right. I know this is a developer preview, and I promise we will look at that LWC code. But first, let's take a look at the flow that we just went through. Now, a minute ago, I talked about we got a list of replacement parts, we made some selections, and then for those replacement parts, we needed to find the tools to select what tools were used for that replacement. If anyone here has solved a similar related records problem or tried to with Flow Builder, you probably ended up with something that looks like this, where we have a loop, and inside of that loop, we are doing a query, and I'm sure many people in this room are shuddering because this is really unscalable design. We're going to hit our socket limits really, really quickly. But I actually have a secret to share with you. This is not the flow we used, or the latest version that we used, at least for this engine inspection. Let's switch and show them the new one. So as you can see, there's no loop anywhere on this screen. And that is with the newest superpower for people who are building scalable flows, which I hope is everyone in this room using Flow Builder, the in operator. Let's show them, Mohit. Awesome. So in our get records, we see we have an in operator selected. There's also a not in operator available. You're going to find this in the record filters section of any get records, update records, and delete records elements. So what we're doing specifically here for this use case is we have that in that value, we have a list of engine part IDs that came from what the user selected in that first data table. And we're using the get records to find any vehicle inspection tool whose engine part field matches some ID in that list. And that's everything. Before we wrap up looking at this flow, I wanted to draw your attention to this Apex action right before on the canvas. So what this is doing is kind of solving a gap that we have right now. So the data table is always going to output a list of records. The in operator in Flow today supports primitive collections. So we needed to basically transform that data table record collection into a list of IDs that the in operator could deal with. But you may notice there's something else going on this Apex action. It's a gingerbread man. That's a very unusual look for an element. This is another Easter egg from last release, I believe, custom icons for Apex actions. This means that, again, you can provide context to the people who are using, in this case, your Apex actions to build out processes in Flow Builder so that when they look at their canvas, they know exactly what's going to happen in that node. Let's actually show them how they add custom icons. So here we are in our invocable method annotation for that Apex class. This is familiar to some of you today, at least from Chris's demo that we saw earlier. The one difference here is that in the method annotation, we're adding the icon name attribute. And we're setting this to a static resource where we uploaded our SVG. That's the main rule to keep in mind. If you want to bring your own custom icon, make sure it's an SVG. You can upload a static resource and reference it here, or you can reference an SLDS utility icon if one of those fits your purpose. And now we have smoothly segued into the code segment of this presentation, and that's where we're going to stay. So yeah, we're going to talk about that LWC. The first thing I wanted to draw your attention to is this C-modal component. So we've built our own custom one, but there is a standard component coming in October for those of you who want to replace your custom modals. We couldn't use it here today because this entire demo is on production. But we're going to talk for the rest of this time about that Lightning Flow component, the star of the show. So the Lightning Flow LWC has complete parity with what we had with the Lightning Flow Aura component. And what we're doing here is first, with that Flow API name attribute, telling the component what flow to run. And now we're passing in the flow name dynamically so that we don't have to repeat this HTML over and over again for every item in that checklist. Next, we're setting the values for any of the flow's input variables to provide that beautiful context that I love, and I hope you all do too. And then finally, with the onStatus change event handler, we are going to be capturing any outputs from the flow and status changes. But none of this is hard-coded, as you can see, so we're going to go and check out the JavaScript to see what's happening. We're going to start in the connected callback. This is where we are figuring out what flow should we start based on what inspect button was clicked. So when someone clicks the inspect button for the engine item, like we did today, we have a mapping to the engine_inspection flow. If we had instead clicked the inspect button for the suspension item, we would have started the suspension inspection flow. If we scroll a bit further down, we're going to see how we're setting values for those input variables. Now, every flow in this checklist just needs the same context. It's what is the vehicle that this component was embedded on. So we're able to set that globally for every flow called from this component. And lastly is our finish handler. So we're detecting when the flow status is updated to finish. And at that point, those 4 things we saw earlier are going to happen. We're closing the modal. We're firing that toast message to notify the user. And then we are marking that item complete, hiding the inspect button, and incrementing that progress indicator. And that wraps up my demo today of Lightning Flow. Thank you so much for your time. I can't wait to see what awesome stuff you all build. I just wanted to also make a call out. I know I mentioned there's a ton more that the Flow team has been up to. If you're interested in learning more, there's the admin release preview today here at 3 p.m. And also keep your eyes out for the Flow release preview that will be available later this week, next week, sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam. So, data table in Flow. If you saw the busy slide, Flow in Slack and Flow in Lightning Web Components, I would say you get a Flow, and you also get a Flow. Add to that Marketing Cloud account engagement external actions, unlocking new B2B marketing abilities with a really deep integration in the Salesforce platform. And last, and really definitely not least, GraphQL, which provides us developers a stellar developer experience. And in the future in Lightning Web Components, I would say, that's crazy. Now, what's next?
Well, first of all, I'm feeling like winter release is going to be one of the best releases we've ever had, Renee.
I would even say we should rebrand it to summer because it's hot.
Well, you guys have waited through all these presentations, and now you want to ask your questions, right? Wait, I can't hear you.
Louder.
OK. Well, for those of you online, you can ask your questions by tweeting them to us using the hashtag Salesforce Live. You can also mention @Salesforce Devs and post your questions to the online Trailblazer community. To those of you in the room, we will have people coming around with microphones. Just raise your hand and someone will come to you. And Renee, it's time for you to go for a run. Okay. I am joined by all of our presenters today, but we will go to the online desk for our first question. Sarah, what do we have over there?
It looks like we have an externals action question. What are the limitations on external actions?
Chris, I believe that question is for you.
Absolutely. Well, what limitations are there? So they definitely, since they use Apex or Flow to be able to build the invocable action, you have those limitations that you do have to consider. But for the most part, as long as it's something that you're building that can use prospect information in order to execute the action, then really there are very little limits in what you can do with that.
That was a great question. Looks like we have one in the room. Renee.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. Hello, my name is Camille. I work for a Dutch bank, and I'm pretty interested in the GraphQL API because the rest of my company uses it, but not in Salesforce. So that's pretty good. And yeah, my question is, are there any limits regarding custom objects for the GraphQL API?
And just so I just make sure I heard correctly, that was the API question, correct? Okay, Suvda, API question.
Okay. So this was whether there was a limitation on custom objects through GraphQL, right? No, there are no limitations. So whatever objects are exposed through UI API, they're all available through GraphQL.
It's a great question. Looks like we don't have one currently in the room. Do we have another one online, Sarah?
Yes, I have a good one. This one is for Sam. What happened to the reactive screens pilot?
So for those of you who are not familiar, we had a reactive screens pilot that is currently closed to new customers. But the idea is how do we get screen components to talk to each other on the same screen so you don't have to split those across and have to click next through them. And although that pilot is closed to new customers, I'm really excited to say that we are really hard at work at delivering the real deal for that. And we hope to have some really solid news for you in spring.
Great question. Thank you, Sam. And we have a question over here in the room with Jillian.
Hi, my name's Jeff. I work for an asset management firm in New York, and I have two questions, but the first one in my mind is, when you post like a SOQL query to the API, obviously you need to worry about how many rows am I returning, how long is that query going to take to run, because we're governed in that way. Are there any kind of governors that apply to what's returned by the GraphQL API? Do I need to know kind of how many child objects I'm going to get and stuff like that when I'm planning my queries?
So it looks like that question's for you, Suvda.
I'll direct this question to Spencer McKinnon. Yeah.
It's going to depend on what you're querying within your GraphQL query. If you're working with S objects, any subquery will be mapped to a SOQL query internally, and so those same limits apply. If you're querying other objects, then we assign a cost to the query as a whole, and that query cost comes out of your chatter/connect budget, which by default is 2,000 per user per hour. So there's GraphQL limits, and then depending on the specific resource, you may have additional limits.
Thank you. Do we have another question online?
Yes, another external actions question or account engagement. Do you need account engagement current additions?
Chris, that question's for you.
That's a great question. The answer to that is yes. It does require the current additions of account engagement in order to use this new feature.
Thank you, Chris. And we have a question in the room. Renee.
Table, I have a question. Since LWCs are now being invoked from screen flows, is there any plan to have multiple parameters in the invocable methods?
Thank you. I'll direct that question to you, Suvda. Or was that was
That's
Flow?
for me.
Oh, sorry.
Can you repeat the question really quick?
So, since LWCs are being invoked from flows now, behind the scene, Apex invocable methods, do you have any plans to have multiple parameters being allowed?
Do you want to take that, Adam?
I'm Adam. I'm a PM on the Flow team. So I guess the first question I would ask is, what other parameters would you be interested in?
Any other? Right now, it's only one.
Well, first of all, no, there are multiple parameters you can put into your LWC to run a flow.
No, like on Apex side.
Oh, on the Apex side.
Like-
Is this an invocable action question?
Invocable methods that can be invoked.
That's actually for Kelly then.
Yeah. So that. Well, so.
We don't have an answer.
Are you? Oh, so what you can actually do is have a class with multiple variables. Actually, so we actually demoed an example of that where you could actually have multiple inputs. So it's not just one.
Okay.
So yeah, so you'd actually use like a wrapper for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is currently possible today.
That's about like I think we're confused on if you're asking about like, can I add multiple methods to an invocable action versus multiple inputs and outputs?
It's inputs and outputs, basically.
Oh yeah, that's currently possible. We should have some examples in our documentation about that, but you would have seen also in Chris's demo, he had like 4 to 5 different inputs at the top of his thing. And those are, the invocable variable is what you want to do to establish the shape of what's going in and what's coming out of your invocable method.
Maybe, Mo, you can walk us through that after the session. You get a practical demo by Mo. That's best of all.
Awesome. Thank you. And we have another question in the room. Jillian.
Hello, my name is Claudio. I'm from Portugal, working for Merkle, a Salesforce partner. So my question is about the GraphQL. So which operations are currently supported in the GraphQL? Only queries, or are you planning to introduce some new operations in the future, like mutations or subscriptions, as we have in other APIs?
Great question. Yeah. So currently, most of the like fetch-related operations are supported. There are a few that are related to mutations. For example, they're not there yet. Mutations are coming up when we have Ben Sklar here. You can answer when the mutations are coming in subscriptions.
Hello. Okay. Hey everyone, I'm Ben Sklar, product manager as well for the GraphQL API. And yeah, so we are hard at work on supporting mutations. We are hoping to release those 2 releases from now on mutations. We don't currently have a target date for subscriptions, but maybe you can let us know more about your use case, and then we can try to prioritize that going forward.
Okay, thank you. And we're going to go back to our online desk. Sarah, do we have another question?
Yes, we do. What Salesforce APIs can be accessed with GraphQL?
Suvda.
Great. So, as you know, you can access multiple APIs through the GraphQL endpoint. Right now, today, UI API is the Salesforce endpoint that is accessible through GraphQL. We are working to add more Salesforce APIs to be accessible through that endpoint. Yeah. Right now, it's UI API.
Thank you, Suvda. And we have another question in the room over here with Renee.
Hello, Camille again. I have a kind of a funny question for flows. So you know that you can have now you can have a screen flow inside of a Lightning Web component, but you can also have a Lightning Web component inside of a screen flow. So I'm kind of wondering, like, how deep down can the rabbit hole go? You know, like, can you have a screen flow inside a Lightning Web component that has a Lightning Web component that has a screen flow inside of it?
In theory, yes, although I think it would be not a good idea. The reason I think it would be not a good idea is because of what I call the dueling navigation. Because if you put a screen flow inside of a screen flow, how do I know what I'm navigating in? So if you need to launch a screen flow from another one, I would recommend doing a button to modal experience rather than a direct embed.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. And do we have another question online, Sarah?
Yes, we do. How do I get started using the Salesforce GraphQL API?
Suvda, you're popular.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll direct this question to tech lead on GraphQL API, Spencer McKinnon.
So there's a variety of ways you can get started. It's just a REST API, so you can call it directly if your organization has API capabilities. We have a Postman collection that we've created in the standard Salesforce collection, so you can go there and use sample GraphQL queries. And then you saw that we were using Graphql. That's also a great way to get started. And then hopefully soon, you'll have direct examples of using Lightning Data Service in LWC, kind of another way. So the great thing is you can bring your own tooling or use the Salesforce tooling.
That's a great question. How about another one online, Sarah?
Yes. Let's see. Are external actions webhooks?
Are external?
Yeah, I think I'm going to pass that one to Ron.
Ron Senior. They're not exactly webhooks, and webhooks in general are sort of, it varies the definition. But you can use them similarly to webhooks based on marketing events, based on your Engagement Studio program. So.
Thank you for answering that question. Do we have another one online, Sarah?
Yeah, let me see. We have a few. Are flows supported in LWR communities?
Sam.
Yes, actually, in the previous release, we added a flow component to LWR Experience Cloud sites directly. Adam, we did add, so you can add custom flow LWCs to LWR as well now?
Yeah. So there are a couple of limitations with that. For example, the file upload component and image component. So if your flow has one of those two components, it won't be properly supported in an LWR community. Because there is no Aura in LWR, there are a lot of considerations. So make sure your flows don't have any Aura components. But yeah, we do support LWR.
Yeah. On that note, obviously, if you have custom Aura components, you have a bit of control over it. I believe we have a list of what the out-of-the-box flow components, what remaining ones are Aura. Most of the classics of like text input, radio button, and so on, the ones that are available to all customers are now LWC. But if you have industry-specific components, maybe from manufacturing or something like that, we are working with those teams to get them to convert them to LWC so that in the future, everything should be LWR compliant.
Thank you. And do we have any other ones online, Sarah?
Yeah, let's see here. Can you use any GraphQL client with Salesforce GraphQL API?
Super.
Yeah. Yes, theoretically, you can use any GraphQL client with our endpoint, GraphQL endpoint. But if you're a developer who builds with LWC, Lightning Web Components, I would recommend using our upcoming GraphQL wire adapter because it comes with a built-in methods for importing and querying through our endpoint. Also, it comes with our very popular, widely used Lightning Data Service, which is a client-side caching, shared caching that ensures data consistency across components as well as across various adapters. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Suvda. And do we have any more questions online?
Yes, let's see here. Are custom icons for Apex actions packageable?
Hi, I'm Kelly Gupton, a product manager on the Flow team. Yes.
Very short answer.
That's awesome. I love that gingerbread icon, Sam.
Yes, all the credit goes to Mo.
Do we have any more questions online, Sarah?
Yeah. Let's see. When will we support record collections for the in operator?
Sam.
That's a great question. We know that's a usability concern for a lot of you, so it is on our roadmap. Unfortunately, not in the immediate roadmap, but there are a few features that we're working on that are going to force our hand with that, so it is coming, just not as soon as you would probably like. But
quick
it is
plug
important
for
to us.
ID exchange.
Yeah. Yes.
It matters.
And we'll go back to our online community.
Okay, looks like I have one more question here. Where can I learn more about the new Lightning modal component?
Where can we learn more about the Lightning?
That's for you.
That's for you, Mo. Go ahead.
Am I audible?
No. Do we have a microphone that we could take to Mo?
Keeping you on your toes, Mo. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So Lightning model is going to be available safe harbor in, I would say, another 2 weeks here. And if that is available, we'll definitely have some recipes for you. LWC recipes is your sample go-to project. It's one of the popular projects out there on our Trailhead Apps sample repo. So if you have not got a chance to look at it, I strongly recommend if you're trying to learn LWC. So we'll have some sample code there for you. So it should be available in next 2 weeks. And I'm actually looking to refactor the code that I have in the demo to actually use that new Lightning model component once it comes.
Thank you, Mo. And we have a question in the room over here with Renee.
Number 3 for this great person. I love you.
Yes, and the last one. So sorry. My question is about GraphQL API again. My question is, when it's used in a wire in a Lightning Web component, can we define the query dynamically? And if we can it also be reactive? So if it changes, then it gets called again, etc.
GraphQL GraphQL questions.
Spencer, do you want to take this question? Okay. Yeah, thanks. Dynamic queries.
It's going to be kind of a staged rollout. Initially, it'll be static queries within Lightning Web Components. Because of the nature of the schema, and we have to understand your object level security settings and field level security settings, the schema is somewhat dynamic based on the user's settings. And so we want to have additional libraries around helping you build those dynamic queries, because we have to throw some kind of metadata annotations on that query. So it is planned to come, but it'll likely come after static queries. For reactivity, maybe we can follow up after that. I don't know the answer to that question, but we can get back to you.
Thank you, Spencer. Okay, we'll go back to our online community for another question.
I have exhausted all of our amazing community questions.
I see
This
one
Mo
here.
has one.
Yeah, I see one here, and this is more for Apex. When are we going to see the reflection, like the generics, true generics in Apex?
Hello, I'm Daniel Bellinger, Apex Product Manager. So some of you may have spotted earlier on in some of the what's coming up release slides that generics is on our long-term roadmap. It's going to be a bit of a path because supporting the type erasure and that over our current collections is going to require some work, but it is something we're looking at. If anybody did have any particular things they needed around that I needed to support, please contact me. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, Renee, I think it's time for you to run back on stage.
So I would say, it's time to wrap up. Flow, account engagement, GraphQL. A lot of running around the room. After 3 days of Dreamforce, it was energizing.
That's right. And we want to thank you all for attending here in person, as well as to our online community. We also want to thank our amazing product managers that we had here today, as well as all of our other speakers that helped with all the questions in the room.
And yes, same here. I would say that's it. Thank you for attending Readiness live here from Dreamforce. If you want to learn more, we have a trail mix for you. salesforce.co/learnmore to learn more all about the great topics that we covered today. Happy Winter 23 release. Bye.
Thank you.